Yes, that is a Tenicor Arx Lux on the now famous or infamous Secret Service agent. I designed that holster and we make thousands of them. So what happened here? So there are a lot of people that are throwing shade on the Secret Service, and I think they're doing so out of ignorance. There very well may be issues with training and equipment and skill, but from the outside, we don't actually know the details. We don't want to join the dog pile on the Secret Service, but what we do want to do is look at the equipment and the skill in a more general sense and see what we can all learn from this event. Specifically, what we want to do is look at the tactics of concealment and the skill of reholstering during a tense or stressful situation. Here at Tenicor, we like to look at most things through the lens of the priorities of survival. So mindset, tactics, skill, and equipment. So I believe a significant portion of mindset is confidence. Confidence is something that you develop through skill over time. It's not something you can just muster up. We define tactics as manipulating a situation to your advantage. Concealment has been a long-standing tactic for the Secret Service, and for good reason. It has been a tradition in American political culture. We don't want our president and his protective detail walking around looking like a third world dictator. In this particular situation, concealment is a necessary tactic for these agents, and they have to deal with the realities of concealing a handgun while wearing a professional business suit, body armor, radios, and more. This tactic is a trade-off with skill. It's often more difficult to access a gun in a holster that is well concealed. This agent has a holster, an Arx Lux, that is designed specifically for concealment. However, that specific holster may not be the best design for her. Reholstering is a skill, and like any skill, it has to be practiced over and over with the correct equipment. One issue that can crop up with reholstering is floating the gun in space. This is when your gun and your hand do not have a reference point or index point on the body, and the gun floats in space. A more effective way to reholster, and one that stops the floating problem, is to just reverse the draw. From the ready position, just break the grip apart. Your thumb and the bottom of the grip should still be referenced on your chest. From here, the muzzle goes straight down, everything is still in contact with your body, and then straight into the holster. Then when I draw, I'm going to follow that same path out. This is a much more consistent and reliable method of reholstering. So one way to ease the burden on the skill is to change your equipment. In this situation, I have a holster that is offset from the body and dropped lower, so it's much easier to access. However, it's a significant compromise in concealment.
Brother, what's that?
We've already identified that concealment is an important tactic for the Secret Service. So as nice as this holster is for drawing and reholstering, it's not the answer. Designing a high-performing holster is essentially a geometry problem. There's obviously the geometry of the holster itself, but there's also the geometry of the individual person who's going to be wearing the holster. So let's say you have a higher waist, and then your hips are wider than you are around the waist. How does that geometry interact with the holster? So if I just take my normal hip and waist geometry, and then I add an object here under the holster and the gun, it's pretty easy to see how that affects concealment. This clearly creates some issues. The top of the gun and the holster are angled in toward my body, so I have to maneuver my arm and my wrist in a more awkward position so that I can access the gun. The Arx Lux and similar concealment holsters with a 10-degree cant are designed to be worn behind the hip. If the holster is moved forward of the hip like this, that cant makes the grip even more awkward. So obviously an easy way to solve this whole problem is to change your equipment and use that dropped offset holster we talked about earlier. That fixes the angle and then makes the draw and reholster super easy. But that doesn't work for this particular situation where we've already established that concealment is a priority. So if this is geometry you're working with and concealment is a priority and Arx Lux is the holster you're working with, then it's not optimal, but it's certainly doable. So to make this work, it's going to take a lot more practice and a lot more reps than other carry positions or other holster options. This is really a geometry problem and not an equipment problem, so we shouldn't be emotionally attached to any of our equipment and be willing to change as the situation dictates. We should find equipment that meets our mission requirements and meets our skill requirements, regardless of whether we are a professional Secret Service agent or we're a private citizen. So find equipment that meets your specific requirements and then train with it until you achieve proficiency. But what if you're not a Secret Service agent and you don't care about any of that, but you want to avoid more common concealed carry mistakes? Go check out this video here.